So up in Detroit, they've made a move and fired Matt Patricia, the failed Bill Belichick coaching experiment, whatever you want to call it. However, they brought in a new guy, Dan Campbell from the New Orleans Saints. There's been some real goofy stuff going on. I don't know if you guys saw the press conference where he gave some fired up speech where he was trying to act tough and talking about getting knocked down and chewing off their opponent's kneecaps or whatever, something like that. It was pretty weird. He pretty much lost me off from the jump, so some of the words probably got jumbled up. But regardless, it was some real goofy stuff going on. And the next goofy move they're making has been shopping around and agreeing to mutually part ways with Matthew Stafford. Now, we've seen this before when new coaches staff, new regimes come in and they just want to get their own guy. So I understand it, but Matthew Stafford is a veteran, capable quarterback, and he's going to be out on the market. So how does this affect the Carolina Panthers? Because we've established that the Panthers are probably going to be looking to upgrade the quarterback position this offseason. So with Scott Fitterer, our new GM, they say we're going to be in on every deal. So is this something that they may consider? You know, what kind of effect does Matthew Stafford actually being available have on the Carolina Panthers? We're going to talk about all that. And I'm going to tell you why it may be a good move to go get him and a bad move. But before we get into the dirty details, I got to start by saying my name is Aaron Duncan here with the Necessary Bluntness Sports Talk. This is the channel where I talk about the Carolina Panthers via live streams, film breakdowns, and all kind of analysis just like this. So if you don't want to miss any videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button, guys. And hit the bell icon, because if you don't hit the bell icon, YouTube may or may not send you a notification, because sometimes they just be hating on the player. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why they don't always send out notifications, but they may or may not do it. So if you don't want to miss any videos, you got to hit the bell icon, because there's a ton of stuff going on this offseason for the Carolina Panthers with a lot of changes. And I'm going to be on top of all that. So make sure you guys are subscribed. And also one more thing before we get into it, give the video a thumbs up, because it doesn't cost anything, only takes a second, and it really helps my video getting the word out through the algorithm on YouTube. Okay? Now that business out the way, let's get into this Matthew Stafford business. You guys let me know down below in the comments, do you think the Panthers should go after Matthew Stafford? You know, the asking price is probably going to be a little bit cheaper than Deshaun Watson, and he's a very capable quarterback also in Matt Stafford. So let me know down below in the comments, do you think we should go after Matthew Stafford? So before we get into this, I have to admit, one hand on the Bible or the Bible app on my cell phone, I'm not a huge Matthew Stafford fan. I respect his game. I'm just not a huge fan. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because I was skeptical of him coming out of college, and he's actually proved me wrong. I thought he was only just relying on Megatron because he played with him earlier in his year. But ever since Megatron retired, Matthew Stafford proved he can be a very capable quarterback. Not a ton of winning, but he's a very capable quarterback and one of the top-notch quarterbacks in the league. So I'm going to be objective for this video. And like I said, give you why I think it should be a good move and why I think it may not be a great move for the Carolina Panthers. So Matthew Stafford, of course, he is available. And we made a video already talking about should the Panthers make a move for Deshaun Watson, because since he's 25 and probably a top 5 quarterback in the league, it may be worth it in the long term, because this guy's going to be terrorizing the league for the next 10 years or so. So going for Deshaun Watson seemed very much worth it. It was going to be box office, instant ticket sales, instant excitement for this franchise, pretty much a shot of adrenaline in the arm of this franchise that's been kind of struggling ever since it lost its big-time guy in Cam Newton. But one of the reasons why they probably should consider Matthew Stafford is because if you were willing to go after Deshaun Watson, the asking price is much lower than Matthew Stafford. It's still going to be pretty stiff, but because he's a top flight quarterback, but he is going to be 32 when next season starts. So he's going to be not up there in age. You know, we got guys in the playoffs that's playing into their late 30s and early 40s, you know, so he could play in the league another 10 years if he wanted to, possibly, depending on the way things go. So is this something the Panthers should consider in going to get him? Because Matthew Stafford could be a good staple for this program to stabilize this team. Another reason that you should probably consider him is because he's on a fairly favorable contract for a quarterback of his stature, you know, because he has 2 years remaining on his contract and $43 million combined. So that's about what, $21.5, $22 million per year? That's about equivalent to what Teddy Bridgewater is. So if you get Teddy Bridgewater off the books, bring in Matt Stafford, you got Matthew Stafford for another couple years for cheap. So a lot of people in Panthers Nation are saying that trade-off between Matthew Stafford and Teddy for the same price, it sounds like a no-brainer. But I'm going to get back into that point when I get to why I think it's not a good fit later on. So I'm going to keep that in mind about Matthew Stafford's contract. But from a skill set standpoint, Matthew Stafford fits this offense pretty well. He has a super strong arm, a lot of zip on it, good for throwing those slants that we like to run to Robbie and DJ. He has the arm strength to get the ball downfield to our speedsters at wide receiver. He uses the tight end pretty well, so that could be something that adds as another dimension to the offense. So Matthew Stafford's really never had a running game either, so being able to have Christian McCaffrey could only do wonders for Matthew Stafford. He's tough, he's durable, and not to mention, if you really feel like the Carolina Panthers are maybe a quarterback away from being a good team, last year our defense made strides and we lost, 7, 8 one-possession games because Teddy couldn't come through in the clutch for us? Well, Matthew Stafford, since he's been in the league, he has the most fourth-quarter comebacks out of any quarterback. So if you believe that this team is as close as we may to being able to compete, Matthew Stafford could easily get 4-5 wins out of that and put us in playoff contention down the stretch in those clutch games because he's been there so many times and he's clearly proven that he's one of the best at doing that. So depending on how close you think this Panthers squad is to competing for division titles, playoff berths, and Super Bowls, Matthew Stafford could be a good pick to bring in. But I got to give you the other side of the equation because you know how we do. We got to give you the full perspective. Okay? So why I think it's a bad move to bring in Matthew Stafford and make that trade. So the first reason is, one of the reasons I talked about why it could be a good move. He's 32, but he's a weird 32 because Matthew Stafford really gets beat up a lot. He plays a ton of games and he's pretty much always in there. He has missed some games early in his career and probably 2 years ago he missed half the season. But Matthew Stafford plays through broken fingers, plays with hurt shoulders, plays with bum ankles, plays with all kind of different injuries. He's a tough guy, but do these injuries take a toll on him and eventually he'll just get tired of fighting through it and rehabbing and we'll be able to get 10 more years out of it and play till he's 40-something like Drew Brees or Tom Brady? You never know. So you really never know. 32 is still young, of course. You probably could have get at least 5 to 6 years out of him depending on how things go. But we've seen guys like Ben Roethlisberger who plays through a lot of injuries kind of wear down as his career goes by. So 5 years of prime Matt Stafford, it's not that bad, but at the same time, there's a lot more question marks about how long he can keep this up than it is answers for it. Next problem, like I told you before, is his contract. Yeah, it's very affordable. 2 years, $43 million left on his contract, about the same price as Teddy Bridgewater, except you're getting more talent. However, Matthew Stafford being 32, and like I said, knowing how long quarterbacks like to play, he's not going to play both years on that salary. Yes, according to Spot Track, the contract tracker, you'll be able to get Matthew Stafford on the books for only $10 million if you do the trade because Detroit will still be on the hook for half his salary and the new team will only be on the hook for $10 million. However, that last year is when there's another 20-something million dollars there. But if you've been paying attention to football, these quarterbacks never play on the last year of their contract. They always try to sign an extension right before that final year of that contract. That way they have security. It's rare that you have occurrences like that. And of course, you saw what happened with Cam Newton. Cam Newton was wanted to have a contract extension probably to be with the Panthers for a while. And he wasn't going to play on that last year deal from what I understand. So the Panthers did what they had to do and just cut him because they knew it was going to be a tough situation and they wanted to kind of move on and have their own era. Because quarterbacks want that security. And Matthew Stafford hasn't signed a contract extension since 2017. So back then, the QB market was a lot cheaper. Now, a guy like Matthew Stafford is going to command $35, maybe $40 million at this point, depending on how COVID-19 bounce back of the salary cap is at the next season. Because right now, we're a little bit hampered on the salary cap because of the loss of revenue from COVID. But once that salary cap booms back up, Matthew Stafford's going to want that check. And we're talking probably $40 million. How are the Panthers going to be able to pay Matthew Stafford $40 million and still expect to sign Taylor Moton this offseason and possibly Curtis Samuel and maybe bring in some other top flight defensive free agents? Or next year, you got DJ Moore who's going to be in this contract year and you got Robbie Anderson who's going to be in the contract year. So how the heck do you expect to pay all those guys, including $40 million for Matthew Stafford and still make all this work? I just don't see the math working out, man, because he's going to want a big boy check after next year. Not playing 2 years on a cheap contract. So you got to understand what these contract situations are played out for quarterbacks. They're always the highest paid players, and they want to get that security. So there's a lot of teams in the league that's probably going to be inquiring about Matthew Stafford because it's a guarantee that he's available. Deshaun Watson, people want to know some things, but there's no guarantee that Watson will be available even if he says he doesn't want to play there anymore. But Matthew Stafford is going to be very competitive to try to get him. So the Panthers aren't really in a position of getting a bidding war to try to acquire Matthew Stafford because the price should be cheaper than Deshaun Watson. But if it gets any more than that, I think it's too rich for the Panthers' blood. You're better off trading up in getting a draft pick and a young quarterback in this draft and moving on with the future doing that. But the thing you also have to think about too, because Detroit has a higher pick than the Carolina Panthers. So if they're talking about trading Matthew Stafford, unless they make a trade for another quarterback that they bring in part of that deal, they're going to be looking to draft a young guy. And with new coaches, more likely than not, they're going to be looking to the draft. So this almost guarantees that the Carolina Panthers are going to have to trade up if they want to get one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. Now, that can be a good thing, and that can be a bad thing. The bad side about it is you got to trade up to get the guy. If you want to get the guy, you're going to have to give up some draft capital. The good thing is there was a lot of question marks ahead of you in the draft of, oh, will Trey Lance make it? Will Zach Wilson make it back? Will Justin Fields make it back to number 8? Now you know that it's not going to happen, and you're going to have to go up and get that quarterback if you want to get your guy. So it kind of makes it clear as mud, because some draft and analysts are saying if the Panthers stay put, we're probably going to get Penei Sewell, a great left tackle who would be a great cornerstone. And then maybe you end up drafting a guy later in rounds like Kyle Trask or a Kellen Mond or a Sam Ehlinger, guys like that, and put him behind a solid offensive line, build up that defense, and then go from there. Because like I said, I think it's unlikely that we trade for a vet quarterback of that age, because with Scott Fitterer, our new GM, you know the formula that he's bringing from Seattle. Seattle, what did they do? How did they win the Super Bowl? They beefed up their defense. They paid the money, got the good pieces on their defense. They got a quarterback late in the rounds for cheap, like Russell Wilson, kept him on his rookie contract. Once they thought Russell Wilson progressed enough to be able to carry the team, they let some of those expensive defensive players go. They paid Russell Wilson that money and let Russell Wilson carry the franchise on to be successful. Granted, they've struggled some since having the Legion of Boom gone and Marshawn Lynch, but you've seen the formula before. So it's more likely that the Panthers will go after a young quarterback or try to trade for a younger quarterback like Deshaun Watson than it is for them to go get Matthew Stafford, a 32-year-old quarterback who's going to be wanting $40 million probably within the next year or so. But like I said, at least we know that the picture is clear when it comes to the draft, and I think that we should probably stay away from Matt Stafford. I respect this game, but it may be too rich for our blood, and it may change some things in the draft for us. So we'll see what happens. But you guys let me know down below in the comments how you feel about Matthew Stafford possibly being in Carolina. But without further ado, I'm Aaron Duckett signing off. I'll see you next time. Peace.